Hello everyone, welcome back for a new Yu-Gi-Oh! Related video. This time, taking a quick look as I recently completed the full Metal Raider set, which is a total of 144 cards. Thought I'd go backwards and start at the first, which is the very last card, which is number 143. With that said, stay tuned, and in the future, once I complete, there's a couple other series I'm working on, and I'll do some reviews to this once I complete them. But first up, we have, of the Metal Raider cards, of course, the very last card is Thousand Eyes Dragon, which is one of two secret rares. The other one is card 000. Thousand Dragon all-time classic, popular one from the actual show. Then another classic is Heavy Storm, which surprisingly never really saw any play in the TV show, which is interesting. Though could be useful definitely in a tight spot. Also, you have this, which was an okay, decent equipment card, as you could gain 700 attack during each of your standby phases, though. But also, the equipped monster loses 200 attack. That's the bad thing. After attack phase and stuff, yeah, then you lose 200. That is the backlash, unfortunately, of the card. Share the Pain was an interesting magic card of the time period, as it allowed you to tribute one monster and make your opponent tribute one monster for no effect. Which could be useful, because you could sacrifice a not so good card and then force your opponent to get rid of one of their best. One of my personal favorite magic cards of all time, which is card 139, and that is Ring of Magnetism. So yeah, and I always did also like the artwork and stuff on a lot of the earlier. Then you have probably one all-time classics, of course, from the show, Mirror Force, which was arguably one of the best cards in this series for a lot of people who played in tournaments and stuff. Mirror Force was quite useful, needless to say, one of the best trap cards of the time period. And is definitely iconic. Next up, we have another one which I've never always seen anybody use, for instance, in the show, Paralyzing Potion. It was an okay. Keep in mind, a non-machine type monster equipped with this card cannot attack. So yeah, kind of an odd one. German Infection was another one that was definitely interesting of the time period. Then you have Robin Goblin, which was an interesting trap card of the same time period. Another one you never always saw mentioned or used in the TV series. Quite a few in Metal Raiders actually were not used in the actual show. Of course, the Unhappy Maiden, which did have an interesting little effect. Another, I would say, iconic spell card of the time period. Of course, Block Attack was quite useful, needless to say. Next up, we have Sword. Another interesting equip card of the time period. I definitely did like the artwork for it. Of course, an all-time classic, Shield and Sword, or Shield and Sword, and of course, as I keep saying, it looks so much like Wargreymon, it's absurd. Another classic of the more rare cards from the set, Horn of Heaven, which was a good little turnaround magic card. But probably one of my personal favorites was Seven Tools of the Bandit, personally. And of course, you have another, I would say, somewhat iconic card and Magic Jammer, another good turnaround trap card. Of course, probably one of the most useful cards at first would not be big, and as time would progress, this would become a juggernaut. That is Solomon Judgment. Then you have interesting, like special effect cards like Barrel Dragon. What made it interesting was the fact, toss a coin 3 times. If 2 out of 3 results are heads, destroy 1 monster on your opponent's side of the field. The card's effect can only be used during your own once per turn. So yeah, definitely a useful, nice little effect. This was another card I'm surprised I've never really seen anyone talk about, or at least given the fact it was a rare in Metal Raiders, but I don't think they ever used in the TV series. Now this one would actually get used quite a bit. Of course, Gazelle, King of Mythical Beasts. Another someone interesting you never really saw mentioned, Skull Knight, which was kind of an interesting card to say the least. Then you have Blue Winged Crown. Witch's Apprentice was not really one of the absolute best, at least effect-wise. Another, I would say, iconic of the series, Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. Now, this was one, of course, that would appear in the first ever battle between the Pharaoh and, of course, the evil spirit of the Millennium Ring in the only second Shadow game at the time. This was pretty much a somewhat interesting card given its effect, but it only, of course, was only effect useful for fire types. Another card I never really have seen anybody talk about. Now this one would see a couple of appearances on TV, Witch of the Black Forest, which actually had an okay special effect. Lava Battle Guard, another one that is somewhat better well known thanks to the show. Mushroom Man number 2. Now this right here is one of the good cards from earlier days of Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Elf. Was quite useful, given its effect that this card requires a cost of 1,000 of your own life points to attack. Is one unfortunate, but that was the bad effect. The other part, though, is the fact it had 2,000 attack and was a level 4 creature. Niwo Tori. Another one I never saw, weirdly enough, in the animated series. Flame Cerberus. Definitely have some weird ones in this, of creatures like Starboy. Definitely one of the more odd creatures. This one was definitely not one of the best. At the time it was considered okay-ish, but definitely not one of the best cards. Probably one of the most common rares in the game by far. Now, Cannon Soldier was one that actually had a halfway decent effect. The fact you can tribute one monster and inflict 500 points of direct damage to your opponent. That is a nice little effect right there. Then some more or less useless fusion creatures. Definitely some interesting ones of this series. Musician King, weirdly enough, actually made an appearance in the show. The other one, the bit more odd creatures. Now this one would make appearance, of course, involving Weevil. Him and his insects. Ah yes, the Immortal of Thunder. Definitely a bit of an oddball. 7-color fish, arguably one of the best cards, as the fact has no effect, only a level 4, and the fact it also had 1800 attack points, made it a great base immediate card to throw out for a nice little quick easy offense. Then of course you have Thunder Dragon, probably one of the more iconic artwork was. Giga Tech Wolf, Launcher Spider, which didn't make appearances thanks to Banda Keith. Now this character or monster would actually appear a little bit later in the series, weirdly enough. Yes, Bikori Box, which was used of course by Maximilian Pegasus, which does look like a Toon monster even if it isn't. Ryu Kaiser, which of course was used in the early days of Seto Kaiba. And a card used by the Paradox Brothers, of course, Labyrinth Tank. Shadow Girl, which was definitely probably one of the more interesting, very useful special abilities. This would be another one used by also the Paradox Brothers. The fact you could immediately put it out at level 4 with 2200 attack, pretty nice, but it also has a backfire as well. And a couple of more spell card. This is another one that was reasonably useful of the time period. The Little Swordman was an okay, thanks to its effect. I do miss some of the earlier artwork from the series. From some of the interesting designs. Now this was a pretty much useless card right here. Not a good special effect. Now Dream Clown, however, was actually very good for its time period, that is for sure. Thanks to its effect. Now this one was not exactly one of the best effects in the game, though. If you used zombies and stuff, this actually was quite a useful little card. Pumpkin King. Another relatively okay with Crass Clown. Rabid Horseman was actually one of, I think, the better fusion monsters of the specific series. Of course, the other parts. A very nice little useful monster. Cannibal Turtle, thanks to its special ability. Castle of Dark Illusion, which was of course used in the Season 1. Which actually had an okay ability. Kariba, which definitely has its fans, that's for sure. And it's gotten multiple different versions of itself over the years. Another relatively okay monster of the time period, that being Great Moth, of course another big signature of Weevil. This, however, is arguably one of the best cards from this series, Sangan, because of its effect. The fact if this card sent from your field to the graveyard, add one monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand, but you cannot activate cards or the effect of cards with the name of for the rest of that turn. You can only use the effect of Sangan once per turn, but because of that nifty little ability, sending one of your useless cards and then pull right out of your deck a useful card, that is very, very useful for specific types of strategies. Obviously, this was partially designed, I think, for people who were to try to summon Gate Guardian. This was a nice little, as it would allow you to point each of the 3 monsters in order to use and summon Gate Guardian. Another one that would make appearance in the show, weirdly enough, a faceless mage. Now, Dragon Piper was quite useful for certain types of circumstances. Another iconic creature from the series, of course, Sangan. Another iconic card from the show, Time Wizard. Though the card itself in the real game is not as good as it was in the anime series. Battlesteer Witch was okay, I guess, but not as great as some actually lower level monsters. Of course, Swamp Battle Guard, which is useful if you can get it and the other one both on the field at the same time. Not one of the best level 4s in this series. Of course, Baby Dragon, which was useful only for certain circumstances. Arguably one of the best spell cards in this set being Change of Heart, which is an all-time classic in my opinion. Now this was an interesting one. Now this was a very useful spell card, of course, that allows you to target up to 5 cards in the graveyard and banish them from the game. So either in your graveyard or your opponent's graveyard, and that could be quite useful. Tribute to the Doomed was another pretty decent spell card of the time. Fake Trap, a lot of people don't realize this card is actually better than you might think it is. Then you have, I'm not sure what to make of this creature. This one, basically a robot genie that looks like it's coming out of a Beyblade. Though this card would be out before Beyblade, I believe, was really around. Queen Stubble. Yes, Mr. Hunter Spider. Not the best cards, though. Electric Lizard was useful, but only if you use, like, electric elemental creatures, or rather, I should say, earth creatures. Not one of the best fusion, probably one of the worst fusions, in my opinion. And that's just a spiky ball. Interesting design, shark creature. Rainbow Flower, which is definitely different. Probably one of the worst fusion monsters in definitely the series by far. Definitely a bit more cooler, like Golem creature, I think, of the time period. Another pretty bad fusion, in my opinion. Ancient Elf actually could be good in certain circumstances. Magician of Face Sally is not one of the best special effect cards. It was better in the anime than it was in the actual game. Genzo number 7 is kind of the same situation. Blaster Juggler was kind of 50-50. Arguably one of the ugliest creatures in the game, in my opinion. Another signature card of Weevil Underwood, because of its effect, also was quite useful. Steel Scorpion, which was actually really good. Much better than a lot of people realized for the time period when it came out, but its effect is what made it so good. Mystical Lamp was good only if you could also use Login. Now, then you have, of course, each individual pieces of Gate Guardian, like Suijin, Kazujin. Suijin is my favorite artwork, anyways, of the 3. And they actually have decent special effects. And then you have Sage of Thunder, Elegant Egotist, of course, for specifically known My Valentine, Teep Moth, Another not greatest fusion creatures. Now, Mass Sorcerer was an interesting one of the time period. Special effect cards. Of course, one of the most beloved and arguably the second most powerful monster in the set, that being Black Skull Dragon, which is a definite signature in the show and series. Mr. Big Eye, with tons of eyes. White Magical Hat, which is interesting one. One of my preferred creatures. Mask of Darkness, which is an so-so card. Now, if you like zombies, this is one of the classic early zombie creatures. Crawling Dragon, which would also get a variant zombie version, Zombie Dragon. Of course, Cocoon of Evolution, or do the Great Moth. Then you have Harpy Lady Sisters, which is not one of the greatest cards, sadly, in the game. It's, in fact, not that great. You're better just using regular Harpy Lady. Speaking of, definitely an iconic creature, to say the least, thanks to the character My Valentine. Larva Moth. Killer Needle. Yeah, Armored Lizard, basic creature. Rock Ogre, 1. Of course, another super iconic card with Summon Skull. And only 3 more. Of course, another iconic with Winged Guardian of the Fortress, number 1. Of course, Feral Imp, another classic from the early days. And then last but not least, of course, rounding off, is card 000, Gate Guardian, which was the big one for this series. The most powerful at the point was by far the most powerful attack-wise out of the creatures, but not that easy to summon, but with a 3,750 attack point, yeah. Needless to say, it was unrivaled at the time, one of the most powerful creatures in the game. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time, and that is the complete set of Metal Raiders. With that said, stay safe out there, and hopefully enjoy the music in the background from Final Fantasy VIII. See you again soon enough.